You're listening to episode 303 of the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman. Well, on today's episode of the Small and Supercharged podcast, we are joined by Lulu O'Connor, who is the founder of The Clothes Doctor, which is a really cool brand. I can't remember how I came across you, but the packaging just spoke to me. And then I found out more about you and thought, yes, I need to get you on the podcast to talk all things about startup life and why you decided to go down this route. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here.
So can you take us back and tell us a bit about you? Because you haven't always done this, have you? Far from it.
No, and it felt at the time when I made my career switch, it did feel like a huge change of direction. So yes, I started in the city and I was an equity research analyst at Credit Suisse and then Goldman's, and then I worked for a hedge fund for a little bit. And then I left in 2017 to set up Clothes Doctor.
So that's a very different job, isn't it, to what you're doing now?
It was a very, very big shift. I think, when you work in one of the big banks, you sort of feel at the kind of epicenter of everything. It's very fast paced, it's very exciting. And it's very challenging in its way, but it's also set within very clear parameters. You have your remit, you have your role. And if, for example, your computer stops working, you call IT support. If, you need advice, you go and ask your boss. And it's just such a mind shift setting up your own thing where you literally just have a blank piece of paper and you have to forge your own way, find your own solutions. You end up being IT support, you end up being HR, you end up, being everything within your small business when you start out. So it was a huge shift in mindset, I would say, is the biggest thing. And I thought when I started Clothes Doctor that my finance background would be extremely helpful. And I thought, I'll understand how my margins are going to look and how I need to grow and And actually, very quickly, I realized what I really needed was a background in marketing and sales. And the finance stuff kind of follows that. And, that was my big challenge, I think, was getting that understanding of what I didn't know, what I needed when I started Clothes Doctor.
So what was the first sort of signal that you might consider changing careers? Because they are so different. What sort of led you in this direction?
It's a really difficult question. I think I started to just get this itch to do something of my own. I started to feel, I think, that I wasn't quite fulfilled in the city. And I started to imagine myself when I was retiring, kind of looking back at my life. And I was thinking, do I want to look back at a career in a single sector, basically? With nothing to say that I've built this or I've done this myself, kind of thing. And I think that was where the itch sort of started. And it actually went on for quite a long time before I decided to take the plunge. So I think I'd been thinking about it for about 3 years before I actually went ahead and did it. But I didn't. Some people are really pulled into founding their business because they've had their great idea. And for me, it wasn't about that. It was the desire to do my own thing, but I didn't have the idea. And so it took me a while to decide what that was going to be. It was almost a secondary consideration what the business was going to be. It was just that I wanted to do it, I suppose.
And what kind of process did you go through to decide what area you were going to develop that business in, and then ultimately, the Clothes Doctor? How did you sort of work that out?
You know what? My original concept was to make it much easier for people to repair and alter clothes than is currently the case in this country. And it partly stemmed from I had a really bad experience going to get something mended, and I got pockets in my Burberry coat repaired, and there was a tear in it. And I remember going to get it repaired, and it just wasn't done very well. And I sort of thought, this is really interesting because it's a very old-fashioned industry and it needs modernizing. And there could be a really good opportunity here for a really good digital player to make it much easier for people to actually do this, and hopefully kind of reduce the amount that, you know, we're all throwing away each year in terms of clothing and textile waste. And so that was my original concept, and it sort of came from just I guess I sort of analyzed that industry, and I looked at what was out there and realized there were hardly any sort of modern or like advanced competitors and things like that. And that's where I got started. But actually, one of the things I'm most proud of actually in my kind of journey is the fact that I didn't stick rigidly to my original idea, my original plan. I realized after a while of doing that that there was a better opportunity, or there was a really interesting sort of area which was actually more to do with helping people do it themselves, look after their clothes themselves. And it was, so that sort of shift happened over, actually COVID really helped sort of catalyze that in a way, because everything kind of shut down and we were forced to rethink and reset anyway. And then I realized that actually we'd started with these products, and we were adding them into customer orders. First of all, it was complimentary. It was like, here's a free scent bag to help you stop the moths getting to your lovely cashmere jumper that we've just repaired. And then actually people started to talk more about that and ask us about them, and also people would come to us and ask, how should I look after this garment that you've just repaired for me? Like, what could I have done to stop this happening in the first place? And that was then where, I think, when lockdown happened and we couldn't actually do the repairs, we then had this sort of bandwidth, and we fully pivoted into making products. And then the products have been the things that have stuck, and they've grown really well. And now we've got this range, and it's a much more scalable type of business, as I see it. And I think it's got a really big future, and I love it. I loved what I was doing before, but I found the repairs really challenging in a number of ways. There were a lot of costs, and there were a lot of, we had a team of seamstresses who were working in a little workshop and everything, and that was really challenging, managing that. I find it a lot easier with products. I can sort of relate, and there's also a really nice brand that you can build around the visuals of a product as well, which I struggled with a bit with a services business.
And I think it's really hit onto a few things that are very much talked about at the moment. So fast fashion is well, it's not in, it's in the news a lot, and about this kind of disposable culture that some have kind of gone into. They're obviously very big players in the market who churn out a lot of product at a very, very low price, but you don't expect it to last very long. So then that adds to the landfill and the disposal. There is the cost of living issues that I think so many people are experiencing, and being able to have products repaired, help them last longer. It doesn't mean you don't buy the lovely thing, but actually it means that the cost per wear works out potentially much less than the fast fashion concept. And the other thing about a lot of what you do from my research is the sustainability angle as well, and the environmental side, not just in terms of how you are mending clothes, but how you're prolonging their life and the ingredients that you use in your products as well. So how important was that kind of sustainability side of everything that you do?
I mean, it's very much at the core of everything since we started. We started with this intention that I personally used to be a big fast fashion shopper, and I actually almost became disgusted with it. Like, I would sort of open my cupboards and drawers, and it just made me feel like physically really like repelled that I had so much of this stuff that I couldn't wear. And exactly as you say, it was low quality garments that I'd wear a couple of times, and I'd buy it for a particular event and then just never wear it again. And then you see it months later and think, oh, that was such a waste of time and money, and why did I even bother? So it was a bit of I think as I got a bit older and I started to understand my own style as well, and kind of what suited me, and I think maybe this is an evolution that a lot of women go through, is you start to you know, you don't need to keep shopping for new stuff the whole time. Partly you actually really learn to love the things that you have purchased, and you get them back out again, and you refresh them and you wear them again, and that's a really, so that became really important to me. And that idea of making it attractive, you know, building this idea of a lifestyle where we could actually really take pleasure in doing that, and open our wardrobe and get pleasure out of seeing that, you know, everything in there is clean and well looked after, and it smells lovely, and anything that you get out you want to wear, and it's not just all kind of thrown in at the back in a pile. So I think it was very much ingrained into the original concept for the business when it was repairs, for, you know, for obvious reasons. We really were trying to extend the life of every garment that came in. We were trying to save it from being thrown away. But as we evolved into products, it very much stayed within the core of it, helping people to do that at home, helping people to make those changes, but actually want to and enjoy doing it. I think that was the key thing. That is the key thing for us. And yeah, and then with that, you know, we couldn't comfortably launch a detergent range in, you know, in a load of plastic bottles that were just going to be thrown away and weren't recyclable or anything like that. That just wouldn't have sat with the whole ethos. So we actually worked really hard. The packaging was one of the most challenging things. We spent so long looking at all the different packaging options and trying to find how we could package. I felt strongly that a liquid detergent was, that, you know, personally I find from a performance point of view, a liquid detergent is better than anything else. But the challenge with obviously containing liquids is that everybody puts them in plastic bottles. And so we just had this whole process of trying to work out. We even were looking at these like little wooden sort of boxes that opened up and you'd have pods inside them, and things like that. I mean, we tried so many different things, and the aluminium was where we came out. And I really believe in aluminium, because although there are some challenges in terms of how it's manufactured, it's so recyclable, and so much of it is reused and reused and reused, that's the bit that I think is really important, that, you know, it just makes that recycling process infinitely, well, infinite, and also just a lot easier than plastic, where, you know, even the best type of plastic that you use, it will just be degraded in the first recycle, and it might just only last for 3 before it's put into mattresses or into roads or whatever it is.
Sure, sure. So the transition from service-based to product-based, because you still do repairs now, don't you? But
You
the
do.
products are like the hero now. So obviously COVID helped you a lot with that, but how did you go about developing these formulations? Because you don't, correct me if I'm wrong, have a background in that side of it, do you? In the kind of formulations and the research and the development, I guess.
No, exactly. We worked with some really good partners. So we worked with a chemist team, where basically we just spent time with them, and we sort of worked through exactly the types of things that we felt were important. So it was creating formulations that didn't have palm oil in, for example, which is really unusual. You know, 99% of detergents contain palm oil.
I did
And
not know that. I always associate it with, well, there's an advert, isn't there, with a particular chocolate manufacturer, which is a palm oil based one. So I always think of it in food based products. I didn't know it was in detergents.
yeah, it's in so many different things. It's crazy. But, you know, there's ethically sourced palm oil and things like that, but we felt that it was important not to try to avoid it at all, you know, if we possibly could. So that actually presented challenges. We had to formulate something that used substitute ingredients for palm. We had to we were using natural fragrances, and there were sort of solubility challenges with, you know, getting essential oils to basically stably sit within you know, an active formulation, a detergent formulation, and not separate out and sort of sit on the top, which obviously nobody wants.
You'd have one
Um,
very, very a strong smelling load of washing, wouldn't you?
Exactly, and then nothing in the rest. Exactly. So it was all those types of things. It was a really in-depth kind of detailed process, where we worked closely with the team of chemists who actually kind of produced the different rounds, and we all tested them out, and we had actually a lot of fun as well, especially with the fragrances, sort of choosing the blends that we wanted. And we'd get samples, 10 or 15 samples, and we'd do blind kind of smell tests with the team and try and see how long they lasted on the clothes as well. So we'd test them at different stages. And it was really interesting, actually. Some of them, we have a cedarwood and vanilla. I'm looking over the top because I've got it there, but a cedarwood and vanilla knitwear mist, which has unbelievable staying power. Like the cedarwood smell just really sits in the clothing, and we kind of were testing it 3, 4, 5 days later, and then weeks, and we were like, wow, it still smells. It's incredible. And that's just sort of, that's, where possible, we were trying to use all the benefits of the natural ingredients that we could, and make use of the actives, I guess, within those natural fragrances. So we use eucalyptus, which has antibacterial qualities. We use that in our sports wash, and we really tried to kind of bring those in and minimize the kind of artificial elements of the products where we can.
Sure. And when you were kind of working these out, obviously your products aren't expensive, but they aren't cheap. You can go to a supermarket and get fairly cheap liquid off a shelf. Were you concerned about the kind of price point, or was it because you knew your customers and actually they're spending decent money on really nice products, actually they want to look after them? How did that kind of work out? Because although obviously the market is huge, it's not the sort of cheap and cheerful get a bottle of home own brand liquid stuff in a plastic bottle.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think we really felt that there was a market, and we found there to be a market for the kind of top quality ingredients, and those real essential oils, those formulations which help people look after their most precious garments. We don't sort of, in a way, we don't really try to compete with the Purcells and the Ariels of this world. We're really focused on helping people with those pieces that they really care about. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting is we've found that a lot of our customers are people who might have previously dry cleaned their silks and their cashmere and paid 14 or 15 pounds, possibly per item, or more for some items probably. And they are trying it at home, trying to wash at home. And so they know that they need to get the best product they possibly can, because it's an alternative to dry cleaning, basically. And that's another thing that we really advocate, is if you can avoid the very heavy chemicals that you get with dry cleaning, you don't need to dry clean, your silk dress or your cashmere jumper. They will wash perfectly at home. They will smell better. They will look better. It's a lot cheaper and it'll last longer. And so, by being the kind of obvious choice for people making that step, that was, I think, where it continues to be where we get a lot of our customers coming into the brand.
Actually, that's really interesting. So from me thinking, looking at your products, I say are not expensive, but they're not the mass market ones, that they were more expensive. Actually, when you look at the cost of dry cleaning, let alone the inconvenience of it, they're an absolute bargain. And
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
and I'd imagine as well, if I've got anything, I have had stuff before which is dry clean only, like you don't wear it, or you wear it and you put it away carefully and you only wear it on special occasions, and
Yeah,
even if you love it, you're so worried about it getting stained or dirty, because then you've got to march off to the dry cleaners, pay for that, wait for it to come back, and all that extra kind of life admin. Whereas it makes them much more wearable if you can just wash them at home.
absolutely. And that's what I've been doing that for ages. I mean, years and years and years with my so-called dry clean only items, obviously with a few exceptions. Like I would never hand wash a suit or something like that, or something that's tailored, but I'd say 9 out of 10 of my dry clean only items in my wardrobe, I wash them by hand, and they come out really, really well. And then the other thing that we offer is the sprays, which, they last forever. And so again, sort of price per use, they're very, very affordable. But they mean that, again, like they would be perfect for a suit that just needs freshening up, but you don't need to take it to the dry cleaner, you can just spritz it down. And so again, yeah, I think affordability, it's all relative, isn't it? And
Completely.
I think it makes a lot of economical sense as well, some of these changes.
Completely. So which product did you launch with first, and how did you do that launch? How did you get the clothes doctor out there?
Our first one was our cashmere wash. And if you really want to know, we had a little office in Farringdon. This was pre-lockdown, and we basically mixed it ourselves
I love that.
in
I
the
know, I love the
office.
scrappy. I love that.
And we ordered a case of aluminium bottles. Once we decided on what the packaging was going to look like, we hadn't scaled up yet to doing a proper production run. So we got a box of aluminium bottles and lids delivered to our office. We got some labels ordered, and I sat there and I got so good at putting a label on straight. I put the bottle between my knees and peel it off and stick it on, and then fill it up from a big bucket of detergent and put the lid on, and then there it was, ready to go. And that was our first, I don't know, we must have done the first kind of 500 bottles like that.
I bet
I
that sounds
remember
like a
when we
lot.
first got into Harrods, actually, our first Harrods order we did like that by hand. It was,
Wow.
yeah, but it was amazing. You actually you really got to see, the labels that we'd chosen. We could see exactly, what the kind of finish was, how it looked. You'd really be fully immersed in sort of understanding your product. And then it feels a bit different now. Like, we get the manufacturing runs done, but we still have our own warehouse and everything. So it's all, all the manufactured bottles still get shipped and delivered to us. So we do see them, we quality check them and everything else. But I feel very like one step removed from it now, which is a bit sad. But there's
Yeah.
still that massive pleasure that I get from kind of seeing those, when there's a delivery, and especially if we have a new product launching, and our workshop manager will send a photo of just, these new products arrived, and it just gives you this buzz. It's just the best feeling.
Oh, definitely. And then did you start off with in terms of when you had the cashmere wash, did it go straight into Harrods? Was that did you do that route to market, sort of the wholesale retailer side, or did you do straight to consumer? What was your kind of launch strategy?
We pretty much led with wholesale, actually. It was an interesting one. We did have our website, but it was still very much focused on repairs. So when we launched the product range, they were kind of in the background sitting, they weren't visible on the homepage. There was a kind of section that said products. And it took quite a long time, I think, for Google. And, we gradually changed it and started putting the products up front. And then Google started to understand that actually we were a product website. And then gradually we got more and more customers visiting us organically and finding us that way. But I think because it was almost because we'd had the repairs business sitting there, that it was quite slow. We were quite slow off the mark with actually selling it through our website. But we started going in, we started with Harrods quite early on and with Ocado quite early on. And then subsequently, we've really sort of pushed our own, and we're doing much more through our own website now than anywhere else. It's over half our business now,
Wow.
is our own website.
And you've built up the range quite significantly as well from that first cashmere product. Is that based on customer demand or research, or how do you work out what to do and when to do it?
Yeah, originally it was very much kind of finger in the air, this sold well, so I just have a feeling that this might be a product that people will like. And also, when you're really small, you just don't have the data, or you don't have enough customers really to get great kind of responses to surveys and things like that. But one of the things that I think we are much better at now is now that we have a really good customer base and a really close understanding of what our customers want. We do lots of surveys. We really talk to our customers a lot, and it's really helped. So now when we're thinking about a new product, it has to hit certain sort of there's a checklist basically, which involves the first and most important thing is it needs to solve a problem that our target customer has. And when I say that, I mean our target customer is a woman in her 30s, 40s, 50s, typically maybe with slightly older children. So unlike me, who I've got a 6-month-old downstairs,
Oh gosh.
um, they tend to be, like sort of 7 years old plus is our kind of target customer base. And so interestingly, if I were to go back, we have a really lovely baby detergent, but I wouldn't necessarily have launched that knowing what I know now, because it's a slightly different target customer to our core.
Sure.
Whereas we know that our target customer has major problems with things like moths. They have really nice clothes that they really want to look after, all those sort of same problems arise for them. So our sprays, our clothing care sprays, our knitwear mists, and we've got a deodorizing spray, like those absolutely solve a problem for our sort of main customer. And we're in the process of launching other products which are around moth care, like protecting clothes from moths, because that's such a huge pain point. So now it's much more sort of, rigorous in terms of checking that these things are ticked off, that we know there's a addressable market that's a certain size, and various different criteria that we have. But before, yeah, it was very much like, this would be a nice product, I think I'm just going to go ahead and create it. That was my job back in 2-3 years ago. That was how I operated.
But it is hard when you start. You don't, you know your gut feeling, you know what you believe is right. And I think there is a real concern that people kind of dither on the sidelines too much, because they kind of think that, but they don't quite know, so they don't do anything. And you can't iterate and learn if you don't make that jump, can you?
I think that's totally true. I think there are more than one ways to skin a cat, is
Hmm.
something that I think is very much the case in the world of startups. And you don't always have to, you don't always have to have the perfect solution to something. You just need to get on and do something, I think. So being decisive is really important, and making those leaps where you need to, whether it's launching a new product or whether it's trying out a new market opportunity or launching into a new country or something like that. There are so many different types of businesses that have succeeded in so many different ways. I think you just need to get on and do stuff, basically.
No, I completely agree with you. And talking about kind of making that leap, when you came up with the idea, how long did you carry on with your job in the city and the clothes doctor, or were you quite decisive on, no, I'm doing this, I need to focus on this?
I left pretty quickly. Once I had decided, I think I waited for my bonus, and then I just
Makes sense.
resigned about a week later. That was pretty much it. And I I do remember that I had applied for the trademark about 3 or 4 months before I resigned, and I had bought the domain name. Those are the two things that I did ahead. So that I'm trying to sort of picture when that idea first happened. I remember now, actually, I had the idea in October and I resigned in February. So it wasn't long. Once I kind of thought, right, this is definitely it, then I just went for it. But there had been, yeah, the weighing up and the trying to think, what would I do if I went ahead and did it. That took a bit longer, because I just, I remember I had a few other ideas, business ideas, which I still have sort of jotted down on bits of paper, which I'm too embarrassed to share with anyone now.
But it is all about these ideas and thinking it through and working it through. I think it's you said about you being too embarrassed to share. And I completely get that. I think some of the things that I've done or I've thought about in the past, when I look at it now, I'm thinking that would never work. But you need those ideas to get to where you want to be, to kind of get the creative juices flowing and to start thinking about the ins and outs of different things.
Definitely. And I think also what I've learned is that the idea is maybe 10% of a successful business. The execution is 90%. You know, there are ideas that, you know, if you just do it the right way, you know, that a premium detergent brand, it's not the sort of, what's the word? It's not reinventing the wheel, is it? But, you know, executing it in the right way and building a brand that people love and people relate to, and, you know, and making, it's the decisions along the way, I think, which are so much more important than that first concept, especially if you're willing to keep an open mind, I think, and follow the data and follow, you know, as you learn about the industry, be prepared to adapt. I think that's critical as well.
Yeah, I think the evolution and the pivoting is so important with any business, because if if you just stuck to your guns, you would just be doing repairs and alterations, which is great, but it's not where you're going to realistically be able to scale as much to help more people and to create a much bigger impact.
Exactly. I often think about that, you know, if I'd stuck with what I was doing before, I think I just don't think, I just can't see, I could see it being a really nice small business, but I couldn't see it reaching the you know, the future and the levels that I want to achieve. So yeah, I would
Completely.
agree.
So thinking about your whole journey so far, have there been any real lows along it where you've thought this is flipping hard? I would just like to go and get a job again.
Yes. Oh, in those early days, you know, people say that once you're through the first 3 years, I think I've heard that before, that that's when things are meant to get easier, or, you know, not so
Mm.
many businesses fail in the first 3 years. And that was my experience. I think it's that those early years I found incredibly hard because we were testing and adapting, and, you know, the future was so murky. Everything was just dark. I couldn't see the path, and I was, you know, trying this out and that didn't work, trying this out, that didn't work, trying this out, that didn't work. And then suddenly it kind of all lit up when something really worked. And that was my experience. Now, no, I know that lots of founders who have had a much quicker route to their, you know, their product market fit, and, you know, whether it's their first idea or a slight variation on their first idea was the one that actually they're now scaling and they're very successful with. But mine was a longer journey, whether that was because of my background not being in marketing and I had to really learn how to sell the product and learn about, you know, I kind of came in with the view that I'll make a really good service and the customers will come. And that's just so naive. And that's just not the case at all. You can make the most incredible product in the world, but if you don't market it right, no one's going to buy it. And I just did not understand that. And it took me a long time to realize that, actually. So my low points were, I would say, touch wood, they've all been within those first 2-3 years. I did a crowdfunding round in 2018, which I found really stressful. That was really hard. Um,
Did
Partly
you reach your
because
target?
we did, and we actually ended up overfunding, but there were these days in the middle of the raise when, you know, we just weren't getting momentum, and, you know, we'd had a really good start and then it really tailed off in the middle. And I just remember thinking, oh God, if we don't, you know, if we don't close this, and it's so visible as well, you're up there with your face on this listing and it's for everybody to see that, you know, if you fail that crowdfund. And I found that really, really stressful. And then we overfunded and it was great, and you kind of come out the other side, but you're sort of slightly battered and bruised by the whole experience. I was anyway. And that, I think, goes hand in hand with being a sole founder as well. I think if I'd had someone sitting beside me, maybe that experience would have been easier. Um, and then the other thing that I found really stressful, just going back to the point about things, the future being very murky. Even once you've raised money, if you're not quite sure how to spend it, that's almost more stressful than not having raised it, I found, because I felt such a huge, and I still do feel such a huge responsibility to my investors, that, you know, if I don't use their funds wisely, then that's just, you know, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. So Now I know we're actually doing a fundraise at the moment, and I know exactly how we need to spend the money, and I'm pretty certain about what we're going to get out of it in terms of growth. Everything is very, very clear now. But back then, that was a huge responsibility that I found, and it was a big weight on my shoulders.
I can imagine. Did any of the people that invested at a crowdfunder level, have they now moved up to be investors in the Closed Doctor?
Yes, actually, quite a few of them have.
Wow.
We're really lucky because we've got this incredibly loyal group of investors who have been with us. A lot of them have been with us since those early days. And I never went and did kind of really big raises. And I think a lot of people told me this was a mistake at the time, but people would say you always need to raise more than you think and things like that. But I think we did 150,000 as our first raise, and then I think on Crowd Cube we did 242,000 or something like that. And so we were doing these kind of quite small amounts. We weren't burning a huge amount of cash, and we were kind of taking our time to use the funds. So it just turned out, I think, that we had those investors who came in then, and then they've just continued to. A lot of them have continued to sort of add when we've opened it up to new raises. And even now we're doing the raise that we're doing now is significantly lower than our sales, if that makes sense. So we're not sort of doing a great big Series B or anything like that. We're just raising what we need to get to the next stage, really.
It must be nice having people that have been with you for the whole journey, because they clearly really understand what you're doing and really believe in you.
It's really nice, and people are so supportive, and we just really don't have any kind of negativity in our investor base. When I send out updates to people, I only just get people going, "Oh, congratulations, this looks great, thanks so much for keeping us updated." It's a really positive atmosphere. And our board as well is the same. We've got Joanna Jensen, for example, unofficially is on our board.
I've
And
just released a podcast today with Lemon Fuller, and
have
Joanna
you?
Jensen invests in her. And I've also had Joanna Jensen on the podcast separately because she owns half of a para dressage horse. And I've also spoken to Natasha, who rides that horse. I love Joanna.
She's been so supportive to us. I can't tell you. Like she came in this sort of breath of fresh air and just brought practical, really useful advice, contacts, and she does a lot of playing devil's advocate, but that's extremely valuable. She really tests me on my view on things, but she just is adding so much value to us. And yeah, investors like her are what bring us forward and keep us going, and raise us up. And it's just been, and the other board members as well are fantastic. But it's just that sort of, everything is always right, let's fix this together, and you get that sense of you've got people on your team.
Yeah, definitely. So we've touched on the lows. What are there any kind of real standout high moments on your journey so far when you just kind of thought this was worth all the blood, sweat, and tears?
um we went to 10 Downing Street about a couple of months ago. That was quite a high.
That's very cool.
Very nice feeling. Honestly though, this is probably a typical female thing to say, but I know we've hit milestones, and I am very happy with the milestones we've hit. And our growth last year was our best ever, and that kind of stuff is all fantastic. But I'm always looking forward and always thinking about what the next thing is that we need to hit. I don't Until we're actually profitable, that's when I think I'll really think, okay, now I might actually have a holiday. No,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you always feel as if you're just trying to get to that next thing. And yeah, profitability is my next goal, basically. We've had good growth. We've got much more to go for in terms of growth, but um, I don't feel as if it's real until we're actually paying our own way, if that makes sense.
It must be such a juggling act as well when you're talking about your profitability, because you've got to expand and grow, which needs money. So even though you're making like really good sales, it's then you invest it back in different ways. It's interesting, isn't it? The kind of perception versus the reality of what it's like.
It's exactly that. It's a juggle, and it's this balance, and you're sort of, it's like brake versus accelerator almost. And if you accelerate, your profit does this. If you brake, growth slows, your profits go up. And that's basically what it's been like with us for the past year or so. And I've been, particularly in the last 6 months, I've been very, very cost conscious. And I think with, every decision, I'm trying to think, will this actually slow us down? If I cut this, whether it's an agency that we're working with, or whether we've done a lot on our cost of goods, finding better suppliers and things like that, which has really helped us. And we've done a lot on our fulfillment costs, which are, in my view, they're sort of almost like empty costs. They don't actually really give you much back. But marketing costs and things like that, that's always the really difficult one. It's like, how far do you want to slow that down?
Yeah.
And how disciplined do you actually want to be with marketing? Because, if you accept a lower return on your marketing dollar, you can grow much quicker. And it's just that trade-off that is really challenging. And in the investor market, being out there fundraising, you get this sort of conflict. People want to see both.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of be able to demonstrate that if we did this, then we would be profitable. But actually, we're not going to do that because we still want to hit that growth target this year.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so, I think it's so important though to talk about these kind of things. I mean, obviously the podcast, but it's really easy online to look and go, oh, those people are amazing. Look at them. They're flying high. They're doing this. But actually, when you get down to the nitty gritty, it is a juggle. It is a balance. It is stress. And it's a lot of hard graft, whatever level you're at, I think.
It is without a doubt the hardest thing I've ever done. Definitely. I
Would
can say
you
that hands
do it
down. And I
again?
have 2 children.
Would you do it again if, when you were thinking all this, I know what, when you were in your previous job in the city, if you knew what it was going to be like, would you do it again?
Definitely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I was hoping you'd
I
say
love
that, but
it.
I thought, wow, we're in this now. We're in it together, I feel. Um, the
Yeah.
last thing I'm going to ask you, before I ask you all the places where we can find you online, is what advice would you give other people, small business owners, maybe people thinking of taking that leap, or people who have been in your situation in any different way?
I think for people who are thinking about taking the leap, I would definitely say, maybe this relates mostly to the mistakes that I made and how to avoid those. I think I did not ask for help enough when I started out. I took a sort of view of, oh, I'll figure it out, but I didn't go out there and learn. I sort of wanted to just learn as I went along, but actually, I've signed up to the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program.
I've heard that's
Um,
amazing. I've spoken to someone else who's been on it, and it's incredible,
um,
apparently.
yes, and actually Lemon from Lemonade Dolls did it last year, I think, and Joanna did it, and I wish that that's not available when you're literally just starting out, but something like that. There are lots and lots of resources available to help you when you're starting out. And I wish I'd taken up those then. I wish I had done courses. There's the Help to Grow, the government Help to Grow scheme.
Yeah.
I wish that I'd done that when I started out. And I think in terms of mindset, the probably the biggest mistake I made is when I first started out, I went into my decisions were done with a very sort of corporate lens on. I'd sort of thought to myself, right, okay, I need to hire someone. So I'll go to a lawyer and I'll get them to write me a legal contract. And they would write it for me and charge me £800 to do it. And then, I'd go and get this person to sign it. And now I would never ask a lawyer to do that for me. I would download a free employment contract online, edit it myself, and send it over. And it's that sort of change in mindset, I think, which I would strongly advise anyone starting out, is be scrappy and really, really look after your cash. You know, you do not need to spend money on half the things that you think you do when you're starting out. You don't need an office. You know, you can do it all from home. You can work out, you can learn how to do things yourself rather than hiring people at the very start. And those types of things, I wish I'd known that. I think I could have saved a lot of money at the beginning of my journey.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I think there's lots of ways, but I also wonder, particularly when people come from more of a corporate background, as you say, if your computer broke, you'd call the IT department. So if you wanted a contract, you'd get legal. So it kind of, it's how you would not condition. That doesn't sound the right word, but it's what you've learned for your entire career. So why would you know that unless you were in it?
Exactly. And once I started to figure it out, it was like the penny dropped, and I realized that actually I'm not meant to be getting other people to do this stuff. I'm meant to be doing it myself. And it's not easy, you know, working out for the first time, you're faced with writing your own employment contract for someone. You know, you're filled with kind of, oh God, am I going to do it right? I'm going to make mistakes, you know, and there are ways that you can get the information you need to make sure you get it right. But you know, that's just an example. But everything that we did, you know, when we first started out, we built an HTML website, and we had a CTO and developers and, you know, a team of people building this website. And then I discovered Shopify and realized that, you know, for a fixed subscription per month, I could have all of it done for me. And that was also a game changer for us when we realized that we could significantly reduce those costs by running it through a third party. And I think outsourcing is something that I've discovered is so useful and so important as well. You can make things a lot more efficient by just hiring the bits that you need rather than maybe necessarily taking on full-time employees or trying to build things in-house.
No, definitely. Is there
Mm.
anything else you'd like to share before I ask you all the places we can find you online?
No, just to say thank you for having me. I genuinely absolutely love kind of being able to share, you know, those mistakes that I've made and those learnings. I just think I find them really interesting, and I actually love looking back at them now. And so yes, I'm just really happy to be able to share them.
Thank you so much. Where can we find you online?
Our website is the best place, which is clothes-doctor.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.